everybody. This is Carol Maletta. Welcome to the Parenting 411 podcast, where we share information parents need from sources they can trust. All right, today we're saddling up for an exciting ride into the world of equine-assisted therapy with our special guest, Daryl Fletcher. He is the Executive Director of SOFA Ranch. Now, have you ever imagined that horses could help your kids build confidence and improve their mental health and learn valuable life skills? Well, Daryl's here to share how his innovative programs are empowering youth, veterans, and underserved communities through the magic of horse-human connections. So get ready to discover how these majestic animals are becoming unexpected heroes in children's development and mental health. Welcome, Daryl.
Hey, how are we doing today?
I am doing great. I'm excited about this topic. As I shared in our previous conversation, I have always loved horses, so I can't wait to dive in. Tell us about the SOFA Ranch and how you became involved in equine-assisted therapy.
I started riding horses when I was 7. And in riding horses when I was 7 years old, my father, I'm the youngest of 3. And as the youngest of 3, I was fundamentally tormented by my older brothers and sisters. In addition to my older brother and my older sister, we had a cousin that my father had adopted. He was, a figure in our household. And so, but they were much, much older than me. My brother's 10 years older than me. My sister's 7 years older than me. And my older cousin / brother, he's about maybe 15 years older than I am. And when I say I was tortured, I was tortured. And just one incident, we had a pool when we lived and grew up in Miami. And remember when, you would buy a TV or buy something large and it would have the styrofoam things in it?
Yes.
My siblings made the idea that, let's make a boat and tie it together and taped it up together and put me in the pool. And I just sunk. And the tragedy of it is I didn't know how to swim.
Oh.
And so these were the types of things that my siblings put me through. And when I was 7 years old, my father, once again, like I said, I was being traumatized by my siblings. And my father said, I understand that you're afraid. I want you to come with me. And so it wasn't a typical thing for us to go off and do things on our own, because once again, we were a family of at least 5 or 6 people.
Mm-hmm.
And this time it was just me and my father. And my father drove and he took me to this ranch / horse park. And I can remember seeing the track that the ponies and horses were on. And my father said, I want you to get on this horse and I want you to ride. So at that young age, I had to be around 7. I was a skinny little scrawny guy. And the horses were intimidating. But he said, basically, I want you to get on this horse and I want you to ride. If you can get on this horse and ride, then there's pretty much nothing that you can't do. And so by the words of my father, I got on the horse, very afraid. But after overcoming my sense of fear, I began to enjoy it. The horse started to trot. And as the horse started to trot, my butt was bouncing up and down on the saddle. But it was an exhilarating feeling. And in that exhilarating feeling, I found the joy of riding horses. But the connection of that was I was able to overcome my fear. And very soon after that, my father passed away. And when he passed away, that particular experience with my father was one of those experiences that was etched in my brain and etched in my memory. And so from there, my mother gave me a book to write sketches or learn how to draw horses. Now, I'm not an artist. I can't draw. However, my affinity for horses never died. And so since that time, over the course of those years, I got to interact with horses. And I always remember the joy and the feeling of liberation that I received from riding horses. So when I turned 21, my wife took me horseback riding again. And I immediately fell in love. I immediately fell in love all over again. And it was at that moment that I realized what I wanted to do in my life. I didn't tell a lot of people. I didn't tell, hey, everybody, I'm going to start a horse ranch. But there was one person that I did tell. In telling him, he was like, wow, that's a real big dream. Because I lived in Miami at the time.
Mm-hmm.
and there were really not a lot of horses in our area.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, it started the journey of me even learning more about horses and learning more about equine assisted therapy and just developing my love and joy and passion for horses.
That's amazing. Now, had you gone very often before you turned 21? Like
It
between?
was very sporadic. It wasn't very often. It was maybe once a year, something to that nature. But when I got into high school, it was kind of all but gone because playing sports, being in the band, all these different things. It really didn't get an opportunity to do a lot of things around horses. But my love for them was still there.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That's wonderful. I think it's a great idea to introduce children to horses at an early age for a lot of the reasons that we're probably going to discuss. But looking at equine assisted therapy and just those programs in general, what role can they play in supporting children with anxiety or ADHD or those who have suffered some type of trauma?
So with equine assisted therapy, I'm going to break some terminology down so that
Sure.
our listeners and viewers would have the opportunity to really understand what it's all about.
Mm-hmm.
Many times when people come to the ranch, they get on the horse and ride in a scenic setting and they feel relaxed and they feel, just cathartic and it's like, oh my gosh, this is beautiful. And they think that they've had a therapy session. And in essence, that's not true. So there are what we call three different categories when it comes to equine assisted therapy or equine assisted activities. So you have an umbrella term called equine assisted activities. That particular umbrella term is basically, it covers anything that may involve a horse. So
Mm-hmm.
if I am riding a horse, that's an equine assisted activity. If I'm brushing a horse, that's an equine assisted activity. If I'm feeding a horse, that's an equine assisted activity. And the reason why it is an assisted, because basically a horse is involved in that particular activity.
Okay.
Then you have what we call equine assisted learning. So equine assisted learning, typically with the equine assisted learning, there is what we call a equine specialist present. I am a certified equine specialist, ESHML or ESMHL, sorry,
Mm-hmm.
which basically stands for Equine Assisted Mental Health Learning. And with that, we will use techniques, resources, or tools that involve a horse to help a particular person learn or even unlearn a particular behavior. Now,
Mm-hmm.
as an equine specialist, my job is to study human behavior and also study horse behavior. And in that particular setting, I become the resident expert, giving people the capacity to understand or maneuver through a different variety of maybe emotions. It could
Mm-hmm.
be mental challenges that they may be facing. It could be social challenges that they may be facing. And in that regard, it's my job to help a person have that aha moment. Now,
Mm-hmm.
it's important with those aha moments that we give the person the capacity and the leeway to have it on their own. Because I study human behavior and because I study a horse behavior, my job is to basically provide the atmosphere and the environment where learning can grow. And so one of the things that we have here, when you go to our website on sofaranch.org, it says learn, grow, and heal. And that's the environment that we really want to provide. And then what you have, what we call equine assisted therapy or equine assisted psychotherapy. With
Mm-hmm.
equine assisted psychotherapy or equine assisted therapy, there is a mental health professional involved. Now, that mental health professional may be a licensed therapist, may be a licensed counselor, may be a social worker, may be someone that has some degree or credentials in a mental health form. And so when that is present, we have what we call the diamond method and the triangle method. And I hope I'm not going too fast for our listeners, and I want to break these down. The triangle method is where you have the horse, the client, and the equine specialist.
Mm-hmm.
However, the mental health professional is involved, but they may not be necessarily present. How are they involved? They're involved, it may be through a referral, or we
Okay.
may have a mental health professional that I send notes to about a particular session
Mm-hmm.
and they give feedback in an effort to make sure that we are on the right track with that particular client or person.
Okay.
And then we have the diamond method. And with the diamond method, that mental health professional is present in that particular session. So once again, we have the mental health professional, the equine specialist, the client, and the horse. And so it provides us an atmosphere that if something may take place where myself, or let's say my skills may be limited, then the mental health professional has the opportunity and the capacity to step in and work through a particular session. It hasn't happened with myself. However, that's how we are trained. And basically, we want to make sure that we provide an environment and atmosphere of healing. You asked me how I got started in this. If I dial back a little bit, when I turned 21, at the time I was 21, I was an assistant youth pastor at a church in Miami. And I would see these young men come in and out of church, being missing for months, being missing for weeks. And I would stop them and ask them, like, hey, guy, where you been? It's like, hey, I've been through a lot, or I've been through the judicial system, or I've been through juvenile hall. And I sat there and said to myself, what if there was a way that we could provide an atmosphere where rather than going through the judicial system, we could send these kids to a preemptive approach and send them to a place where they can interact with horses, learn about horses, and develop certain disciplines and life skills that they wouldn't necessarily go down that wrong track. Now, at this time, at 21 years old, I knew nothing about equine-assisted therapy. I didn't even know it existed. However, I did know the impact that horses had on my life. I was just brainstorming like, hey, man, maybe this is possible. Maybe there's something that we can do. And come to find out years later, it actually is a field of study that people are getting degrees in and certifications in. However, it is not a field that is regulated just yet. And so we're doing all the work that we can in our modern day administration to make sure that we get that regulation on board.
And so when you were saying then, did you take them horseback riding, and what happened?
Well, I didn't take those young men horseback riding, not that particular set of young men. However, once I became a full-time youth pastor in Maryland, I took a lot of those kids horseback riding. And I'm 48 years old today. And some of those kids are in their late 20s, early 30s now. And they still reach out to me on Instagram and social media and saying, hey, I remember when you took me horseback riding, or I remember the encounter that we had with those horses. And it was one of those things where it lets me know that a lot of the work that I was doing at that time it wasn't necessarily structural, but it still made an impact on their lives. And it really gave me the ammunition that I wanted to do even to this day. So in 2014, I retired from full-time ministry. I started writing books. My first book came out in 2016. And then from 2016, I started doing consulting. And doing consulting, my focus was on communication and relationships, both professionally and personally. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, I'm going to make a whole bunch of money. I'm going to, do my thing. I'll buy a piece of property and I'll start my ranch.
Okay.
But it didn't work out like that. So in 2019, my consulting, I spoke at 72 different events that year.
Wow.
And so my job was primarily traveling. And so we know what happened in 2020. So here I am, 2019, I've done 72 events. I'm like, man, 2020 is about to be awesome. We're gonna double what we do.
Same year.
And so January of 2020, I spoke at this relationship conference. My wife and I went, we spoke, had a great time. We got back, my throat was feeling kind of funny. And I was like, wow, that's weird, but okay. Didn't think anything of it. By March, pretty much the world had started to shut down. And my consulting pretty much came to a halt. And at that time, I had 3 personal horses. And I was stuck in the house for about a month and a half. And I'm like, man, I got to get out of this house. This is crazy. And so I started riding horses. And during the pandemic, I was probably riding horses anywhere from 4 hours to 8 hours a day.
Wow.
And I said to myself, well, if I know I want to get out of the house and I know the relaxation and the decompression that horses give me, maybe if I open it up to everybody else or open it up to our community, maybe they would want to, ride horses too.
Mm-hmm.
And so I put an ad in Craigslist, put an ad in the Craigslist and said, if you want to get out the house, come ride some horses, come over to SOFA Ranch. Now, the name SOFA stands for stretch out on faith again. And it's a subconscious message that we try to bring to everyone that comes to the ranch that no matter how old you are, no matter what level you are in life, maybe you have an idea, maybe you have a situation that you want to accomplish and it didn't work out the first time. Well, you just need to stretch out on faith and try it again. And the name was created actually 20 years ago when I was talking to those men. I was sitting there thinking, I'm like, man, what could I call this place? And it was pretty much the seed for SOFA Ranch. And fast forward to 2020, during the pandemic, people just started showing up out of nowhere. Literally, we went from having 3 horses to 10 horses in a span of 9 months.
Wow.
Because of the demand. So that I would say between March, let's say between April and December of 2020, that's where we experienced a large portion of our growth. So in August, I filed my paperwork to be a 501c3 organization. In January of 2021, we launched our first youth program called YEP. It was an after school program where we had 6 young people coming after school to our ranch. And so let me back up. We actually didn't have a ranch. What we did is there was a ranch that was across the street from where I lived. And it was down a dirt road. My son got into a car accident at that dirt road. I drove down that dirt road. I saw a barn on top of a hill. And I said to myself, I wonder who owns that barn. I drive down the road, I make a U-turn and I'm driving back. And then as I'm driving back, I see a lady on a little golf cart driving down. She says, are you lost? I said, no, I'm not lost. I was just turning around. My son got into an accident up the road and I just wanted to, just find somewhere to turn around. And I found a turn around because it was dead end. So then I paused and I said, do you know who owns the barn up the road? She said, oh, that's my neighbor. I'm like, oh, okay. Do you know if they want to rent it? She said, I don't know, but I'll ask my husband. I said, okay, cool, no problem. She asked her husband. That was on a Saturday. That happened. Sunday, her husband called and said, hey, I heard you're looking for a place to rent. I said, yes. He said, well, I got 12 acres and a barn. You can come over and look at it and we'll see what could happen. That was Sunday. By Wednesday, we had an agreement in place for me to rent his 12 acres and to rent his barn.
Wow, that's amazing.
That was the start of SOFA Ranch.
That's beautiful.
So when we started those programs with those kids, it was just, like I said, it just skyrocketed because the parents were seeing the difference in their kids. They were seeing the impact of their kids. And so in 2021, got my certification, went and got some more study, continuing education, and we've just been rocking and rolling ever since.
Well, talk about what parents are reporting. What changes are they noticing in their children after spending time at SOFA Ranch? Whether it's because, I wonder, not everyone that comes is in therapy, right? I mean,
Correct.
they're just coming to have the experience. So what are they saying, regardless of whether they're in therapy or not?
All right. So let's talk about just the average child, no particular diagnosis, and what they're experiencing. I'll talk about them. And then we'll talk about some of our children who are actually experiencing therapy. So what typically parents have to say is that they can definitely see the difference in their children. Now, we take when a child enters into our program and it's not therapy, they take a pre-assessment. This pre-assessment gives us they take two pre-assessments. They take a pre-assessment based upon their emotional intelligence, and they also take a pre-assessment based upon their level of fear. Okay.
Okay.
So we assess how they show up in the world, what they feel like, how are they, do they feel intimidated? You know, how do they feel when they go to a school or a group of people that they don't know? We assess that. And then after they are with us for a while, typically 3 to 6 weeks, we'll give them a assessment while they're in the program. And then maybe another 3 to 6 weeks, depending on what program they're in, we'll give them a post assessment. And 95% of the kids that are in our program experience a jump by at least 15% in their assessment. So if you have a child that is maybe very anxious when they come into our program, let's say they score a 69. That particular score typically jumps to between a 75 and an 80 from the standpoint of their emotional intelligence and also their confidence skills.
Confidence.
Confidence, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And basically understanding how they show up in the world. Because when you're working with a horse, you have to be present and you have to be aware of your emotions. Now, we're talking about an animal that weighs anywhere from 1,000 pounds to we have one horse that weighs 2,200 pounds.
Okay.
And with that, when we're working with these young people, we're teaching them how to be aware. We're teaching them how to be present. We're teaching them how to regulate their emotions. When they may come here and they may just had an argument with their mom and dad. And then now when they're going into work with the horse, they'll say, oh my gosh, this horse is not acting right. Let's pause. Let's wait a second. Is it the horse is not acting right? Or is it the horse is picking up on the vibration and they can smell what's going on inside of you? So the horse is just providing you a mirror of what you are experiencing. They'll stop, they'll pause, and then that's where we get an opportunity to have a conversation. What's going on with you? What happened? Well, I just got into an argument with my mom because I didn't do the dishes. And so now we have two things to address. We have to address the issue of, are you lacking discipline and focus because you had an assignment? But then as we talk about what you're feeling, why are you feeling that way? Well, I don't like the way she talked to me. Okay, great. What about the way she talked to you make you feel funny? I was going to do it, but she didn't have to yell at me. Okay, let's stop. How many times has she had to tell you to wash the dishes? What is the 30th time? But okay, let's stop. So is it really mom or is it really you? It's me, but okay, wait. Before we get to that, but you said it's me. So it's the same thing. It's not the horse, it's you. And it's not mom, it's you. So it gives them it raises their level of accountability and bringing it down into those practical steps. And so we'll do some breathing exercises, we'll do some affirmations, and we'll break some things down. I talked to you a little bit about this before, but I'll wait for that story when we're talking about task. So we'll give them some techniques and we'll give them some insight as to what that looks like. We'll hit what we call the reset button. And after we hit the reset button, we'll tell them, okay, now I want you to go over there and brush that horse or start grooming that horse with a reset mind, with a reset thought pattern. Horse is calmed down, or the child is calmed down. The horse mirrors that particular person's emotions. And now we can pause and ask them the question, what are you feeling in this? And then when they answer what they're feeling in, I feel at ease. Okay, so then that becomes the question of, are you a thermostat or are you a thermometer? And so they'll say, well, I want to be a thermostat. Why do you want to be a thermostat? Because I want to set the tone of my day. Because I want to set the tone. When I enter the room, I want to set the temperature. I don't want my environment to influence me. I want to influence my environment. And so we do these types of techniques and do these types of exercises utilizing the horse in an effort to get the person to understand how they show up in the world and how they can basically discipline themselves to be more confident, to be more powerful, and to learn the life skills that they need in order to be effective adults.
That element of having a live animal as part of the therapy is really key. And I think that, like, even I'm kind of thinking about it in the way that we decided to get our sons a dog when they wanted one, because of giving them the responsibility and accountability for taking care of another being, and all of the relationship building and all of that that could happen. And like I say, that's one of the best parenting decisions that I ever made. And I remember once, I believe when our sons were in high school and they were attending some sort of a workshop about communication and how they handle disappointment or frustration. And one of them just said, "Well, when you feel like that, you could talk to your dog. Like, I do that." And I was
Mhm.
like, I looked at him. I was very surprised. And the speaker presenter was like, "Yes, that exactly." And that it makes such a difference to have that element there, have the animal there, and the horse. So a horse is very different from a dog, but it's a beautiful thing, like, to see.
If I could piggyback off of what you just said in regards to a horse is a bit different from the dog, I want to talk about that for a second. So, horses are what we call prey animals. Okay.
Mhm.
And as they are prey animals, their neurological neurons basically present a mirror. Dogs are what we call they're predators, and
Mhm.
so they are wired differently than a horse. And so one of the reasons why horses are such a good utilization tool for therapy is because the way they are wired is all centered around their protection or their primal instinct of survival.
Mhm.
So when they can smell your chemicals that your body are giving off because you're happy, you're sad, you're afraid, that is a defense mechanism for them. So
Mhm.
once again, if a child comes in with this, rough energy or toxic energy, it creates an environment that is the horse senses get to be heightened and aware. They're like, oh my gosh, what's going on? Is there danger? What shall I do? And my job as an equine specialist, I assess the horse's behavior and assess the person's behavior. And then I see what's going on and give the person an opportunity. Okay, this is what the horse is experiencing.
Right.
So important case, a couple of weeks ago, we had one of our veterans group therapy sessions. And so one of the veterans, he was sitting there brushing the horse, being very calm. Now, on the outside, he looked like he was like everything was fine. But as I began to observe him as he was brushing the horse, one of the horses began to sweat, or the horse that he was brushing began to sweat. There
Hmm.
was sweat on this horse's chest. And so I stopped and I paused and I said, "Hey, sir, are you okay?" He says, "Oh, yeah, I'm fine. Fine. Everything's good." I said, "Okay." So then the horse started to sweat and pawing at the ground. And I said, "Let's stop for a second. Are you sure you're okay?" He
Hmm.
said, "Man, I'm fine." And he kept brushing the horse. So typically in a session that we have with group therapy, we have a debrief. And so after the debrief or in the debrief, he said, "Man, I was nervous out there." I said, "Wait a second. You told me that you were fine." He said, "Yeah, but this is a new environment. And yeah, I'm a be fine. But fundamentally, I was nervous because I didn't know this is my first time being around a horse like this."
Hmm.
So what that presented to us was that he was masking.
Hmm.
And as even with young children, they start masking early.
Right.
Masking is a survival mechanism that when it's developed early, when you get into your adult years, when people ask you if you're okay, you
Mm.
say you're okay when you're really not because it is a survival mechanism in order for you to maneuver through the world.
Mhm.
So here it is. We have this adult male that is masking, but on the inside, he's tore up.
Right.
He's nervous. He's inconsistent. and the horse picked up on it. And because the horse picked up on it, it's his feelings is telling the horse, oh, something is wrong or something is off out here. And
Mm-hmm.
that's an example of how when we understand the mechanics of a horse, it really gives us an insight as to how we show up in the world,
Mm-hmm.
even whether you're an adult or if you're a child, because in our practice we work with both adults and children. And so it really gives us the capacity to understand that masking is not being our authentic self.
Right.
And many times when we have our young people going through life, going through elementary and junior high and high school, they learn to mask so early
Mm-hmm.
that when they become an adult, they're so used to masking, when they actually experience something, they crash out. And when they crash out, they are really coming to grips with those true feelings. So if we can show a young person how to authentically show up and regulate their feelings from a standpoint of, I'm feeling like this,
Mm-hmm.
but I know how to handle this feeling, that particular young person will go on to be a more authentic adult, will learn how to handle situations in their everyday life,
Mm-hmm.
and will be able to be more productive in their school, in their work, and in their personal lives. And
Mm-hmm.
so here we are, we have children, the CDC put up these numbers in 2023
Mm-hmm.
that our children who are being reported with mental health challenges is up by 30%.
Hmm.
It's up by 30%, especially after the pandemic,
Right.
because we have a generation that I can remember this. I heard this story and I hope I say it correctly. I was in the third grade when the Challenger blew up.
Oh yeah.
The Challenger
Mm-hmm.
spaceship was going to the, and I can remember how tragic it was, that it was so tragic that they sent all of us home.
Mm-hmm.
They sent us home because it was a day of mourning.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the third grade. That was roughly 80 something, somewhere right
I
there.
believe it was 86.
86. Okay, 1986. Now, fast forward till today, the children are exposed to so much
Oh my goodness.
to where it feels like the Challenger is being blown up every day.
Mm-hmm.
They're being desensitized to not manage or handle their emotions in such a manner that nothing, they're masking, and they go on and mask and mask and mask and mask and mask. And then there's so much pressure that it's only going to take one incident to have an explosion.
Mm.
And so here it is. We have the pandemic. They're stuck at home. We have racial tension. We have personal tension. We have trauma in the home. We have all these different things going on with our young people. And then they get to high school. They start experiencing other things. They get to college. They start experiencing other things. And then next thing you know, boom, they never learned how to regulate those emotions. They just learn how to suppress them.
Mm-hmm.
They never learn how to operate or address those emotions. They only learn how to dismiss them.
Right. And
And then
that,
the work. Go
yeah,
ahead.
that can definitely happen because those feelings can be uncomfortable for the parents
Mhm.
or the educators or the coaches that they interact with. They need things to be in order.
Mhm.
They don't need any pushback. And so, as you said, children just learn then to not share their true feelings and
Correct.
true emotions, which is really destructive. And especially when they get to be adults and are not able to manage their emotions in the workplace, and it can become very dangerous, actually.
Very, very dangerous. And we've seen it over and over in our modern day times.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because what happens is you have a person that is stressed out at work, stressed out at home, then they come home or they come to work and then somebody says something, and then all it is a trigger. Childhood trauma shows up. Boom.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so if we don't get a handle on our young people and show them how to regulate their emotions
Mm-hmm.
in challenging times, in times of stress, what to do, how to do, and when to do, then we're going to have explosion after explosion after explosion of people not being able to handle their emotions. And I personally believe that horses are a wonderful vehicle to help people learn how to handle those emotions. So I want to switch to the second story where I wanted to share in regards to the therapeutic sides of kids. We have a young lady that is on the spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
That is in one of our programs. When she came here to our program, her parents were overly concerned. She had been in a program in Houston, an equine-assisted therapy program in Houston. They recently moved to the Georgia area.
Mm-hmm.
Before we once again, we took her through the assessment.
Mm-hmm.
And then after we did the assessment, we kind of put a plan in place, or treatment plan in place. And so on the first day, her mom said to me, she said, I think we've done more here in one day than we've ever done in the whole year that we were at the other place in Houston. And we hear that quite often.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the reasons why that we hear that quite often is because the curriculum that we put in place is culturally relevant,
Mm-hmm.
and it is designed to push a child to their greatness.
Mm-hmm.
And many times, some of our counterparts in other organizations like ours, I've noticed that they kind of pacify the problem. And what I mean by pacifying the problem is they end up in a situation of where they're coddling the child and not really helping the child.
Gotcha.
And so with this particular young lady, we started noticing some of the things that with her being on the spectrum, highly functional,
Mm-hmm.
but she suffered from ADHD
Okay.
and was always distracted. We would give her an assignment, she's off doing something else. We would give her an assignment, she would say she was bored. We would give her an assignment, she would cry out for help. And so we put a system in place, and we call it TASK. And that TASK is TASK is an acronym. I love acronyms. And so the T stands for think about what needs to be done. Before you take an action, before you do anything, think about what needs to be done.
Mm-hmm.
The A in TASK stands for pay attention to the details.
Mm-hmm.
Pay attention to the details. Okay. The S stands for stay focused on the task. And then the K stands for keep going until it's complete.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you know anything about children who are on the spectrum, is they love a good routine.
Yes.
And with them loving a good routine, that task provided a framework or a routine for this particular young lady so that she can have the routine of, okay, I'm going to think, I'm going to pay attention, I'm going to stay focused, and I'm going to keep going. And so once we implemented that, we gave her some assignments. She had to make her bed. She had to have a routine when she got up. And one of the routine was making a bed, brushing her teeth. And once we did that, her reportedly from her mother, her school, she was taking some assessments and taking some tests. She went from a 49 to a 78 just after 3 sessions with us.
That's impressive.
And what that did was it gave us the understanding that many times we have to help the children, but also we have to help the parents. And the reason why I bring that up is because one of the things that this particular young lady was doing is when she would ask for help, the parents would immediately jump in and start doing the work for her. And so she would say to me, Mr. Daryl, I need some help. I said, no, I'm not going to help you. She's like, what? You're not going to help me? I said, no, I'm not going to help you. She said, but this is hard. And I gave her this phrase, and I want all the parents that are listening to, once you get an understanding of that your child may be trying to manipulate you, this is what I want you to say to them. We find solutions, not excuses. And so she looked at me and was like, I said, do you know what that means? She said, yes. I said, so I want you to find the solution to the problem that you're having, not an excuse. Because what you're giving me right now is an excuse for you to stop. And remember, we're working on a task. We got to think about it. We got to pay attention. We got to stay focused. And we can't keep going until it's done. And so she was brushing the horse. She was brushing a dirty horse. And in brushing the dirty horse, she would brush one spot and say, okay, I'm done. She's like, no, you're not. Look at this part. The horse is still dirty. Or look at this part. The horse is still dirty. So then after that, I had to meet with mom. I had to meet with dad. I said, for the next month, don't help. I don't care what she asks for. don't help her. And when she does ask for help, I want you to say, we find solutions, not excuses. And the reason why I told them that is because I just can't be the one. She's only with me for an hour and a half every week. And I can't be the one that is driving the ship of discipline. The ship of discipline has to come from you guys. I'm a added bonus. I'm a supplement. But you have to be that daily meal. You have to be that daily nutrition of providing her with the framework, providing her with the atmosphere where she knows that she has to find solution and not excuses. Now, this young lady is going on to do some other things within the community and be more powerful. And one of the things that we worked with her on was with her avatar and her being authentic. I can remember her first day coming to our ranch. She threw me the thumbs up like this. And I asked her, I said, why are you doing that? She said, it just makes me feel comfortable. And she did it again. And so she would do that. And I said, rather than doing the thumbs up, I want you to breathe through your nose, out through your mouth, and say, I'm fine. Because once again, it was like a show, like she was performing.
Got it.
In that performance, once again, she may have not found her authentic self. So in that performance, she's practicing masking. And so I just had her keep her hands at her side and said, I'm doing fine today. That particular exercise just helped her understand, about the difference between masking and what she's actually feeling. But it really helps her understand how to show up and be her authentic self. In that regard, as we are working with these horses and showing up, and the horses, it's so interesting with the horses when we have a child that is on the spectrum. It's like they just know that their children are on the spectrum because they treat children who are on the spectrum totally different.
How so?
They are very docile and very laid back when they have children on the spectrum. You may do an exercise where the person touches the horse's nose. When a child is on the spectrum, their nose goes down quicker for some reason. I don't know why, but I'm doing more research to try to figure out. But when I have a child that's just regular, whatever, that the horse may give a little pushback.
Okay.
But through children on the spectrum, soon as that child comes around, the horse just goes down. They become more docile. So, like I said, they can smell the bodies, the chemicals that your bodies are giving off, and they can definitely smell the difference in children.
Hey, Mama, I get it. I remember those early days of motherhood, feeling totally outnumbered and out of my depth with my twin boys. Mother's Work, Pearls of Wisdom and Gems for My Journey is the book I wish I'd had back then. In my mini motherhood memoir, I share the real, unfiltered moments, from overwhelm to breakthroughs. Along the way, I discovered 7 guideposts that helped me find my footing, and I think they'll do the same for you. And guess what? I'm giving the book away free. Just head to mothersworkthebook.com to grab yours. Just pay shipping and handling, and also get your hands on some wonderful bonuses. You don't have to do this alone. Let's walk this journey together. That's mothersworkthebook.com. Can't wait for you to read it.
Well, you've shared some powerful examples of the impact that these experiences can have on children. And so I'm wondering, how easy is it for families to access these programs, and how can they get involved as well?
I will have to tell you, Carol, it is not easy.
Okay.
Historically, there has been a lot of, if I can use this colloquial term, gatekeeping.
Okay.
And by gatekeeping, what I mean is typically horses have been a symbol of affluence.
Okay.
And with them being a symbol of affluence, it's a case of the have and the have-nots. And that's one of the reasons why we exist. SOFA Ranch exists because we have a particular niche in which we serve underserved communities. We have a program that we have here called Horses Healing the Hood, where we actually take the horses to schools in underserved communities and give them the exposure experience. Now, once again,
Nice.
it's not necessarily therapy for the children. However, it's an exposure experience to give the community and the school and the environment to let them know these type of service exists.
And these types of animals exist because they may have never seen a horse except for in a book.
Exactly.
or maybe on TV.
Correct. And so many times, and I'm glad you even said on TV and even social media, because that's another preconceived notion that people will have about horses. They'll have, oh, this horse is going to kick, this horse is going to bite, this is what's going to do
Oh,
all these different things. And so,
mhm.
and I talk about the negative side of, that portrayal. Personally, I am 6'7", which
Mhm.
means that I am in 2% of the world's population. That is my height. And so I'm taller than the average man. I'm the average height of a NBA player. And one of the things that we would say to children, they'll say, "Oh my gosh, this horse is so big. Is he going to eat me? Is he going to be mean to me?" And I would say, "Well, why do you think that?" He says, "Because he's so big." I said, "I'm bigger than you. Do you think that I'm going to do something to you?" They
Mhm.
said, "No." And so we use that as a conversation starter to
Mhm.
kind of start breaking down, why does big mean mean and little means okay? Because if anyone is in listening that has ever been around horses or for an extended period of time, it's
Mhm.
the little horses that are typically more dangerous than the bigger horses.
And I just said, is that right?
Yeah, so it's the smaller horses that typically have a worse attitude, that are
Oh.
doing all types of crazy things, and so it's like, man, crazy. So like we have some larger horses here, and they're part of our therapy program, and they're just so docile, so laid back, and so once again, we're peeking into the mindset of the child in
Mhm.
order to understand how they're thinking and how they perceive the world. And
Mm.
then now with that, we have the ability to shape and shift that perspective that they
Mhm.
are basically interacting in with the world. So it's important when we're working with these horses that they have the proper culturally relevant curriculum, that they have the proper interaction and they have the proper environment. And so that's one of the things that we try to do. And so to answer your original question on, how persons can get involved, there are we are in the Metro Atlanta area, and as we are in the Metro Atlanta area, one of our ultimate goals is to open up 12 other locations across the country to give
Mhm.
us the capacity to serve more people in these underserved communities. Because in these underserved communities, it is horrible to get people to understand that these horses are a vehicle or an avenue of healing, and not
Mhm.
to be intimidated by these particular horses. And especially, and the other hurdle that is present with the equine assisted therapy realm is that not a lot of insurances accept or cover equine
Mhm.
assisted therapy programs. So in
Mhm.
many instances, people have to pay at the pocket. And so that's part of the reason why we try to do more and more research to prove these services actually are evidence based, and we can show the evidence of what we're actually producing. Stories like the young lady with that is on the spectrum, where her test scores went from one point to another point. We need
Mhm.
more stories like this so that we can present these information to our administration to say, hey, these are the type of results that we're getting versus traditional therapy. So
Mhm.
that we want to make sure that more children have the access and the ability to take advantage of these services. Do we want to do away with traditional therapy? No, we're not saying that we want to do away with traditional therapy, but we're
Mhm.
saying we want to be an added bonus.
And respected this branch of work. What if you had to sum up, I should say, what kind of life skills do you think that children can gain from these experiences with horses and at SOFA Ranch?
I can sum them up into probably what we call the three C's. Those
Okay.
three C's are communication, confidence, and character. These are the type of
Mhm.
life skills that horses give people the capacity to develop. Communication, because if you're able to articulate what you're feeling, then that helps you become a better communicator. And when
Mhm.
a person is working with the horses that doesn't speak their language, now we have to understand nonverbal cues, body language, and being able to express oneself in order to get that horse to move and do what you want him to do.
Mhm.
When it comes to character, it's a lot of work taking care of a horse. We're talking
Mhm.
about an animal that is basically designed to be out in the open in the wild, but in order to keep them in a domestic type situation, it takes a lot of discipline and it takes a lot of character. making sure they're fed twice a day, making sure that they have the right type of feeding to make sure that their nutritional health is still in place, making sure that they're properly groomed, and all these different things. Each and everything that we do when it comes to horses has a life lesson attached to it. And
Mm-hmm.
so we try to make the connection and bridge the connection of when a person is doing just a simple chore or a simple exercise, it once again subconsciously builds that life lesson or that life skill that a person may be able to have. And then we talk about connection. So many of our young people are disconnected. I was just in a restaurant yesterday, sitting there waiting for my food to be delivered to me. And I saw two young men walk in with tablets. More than likely, now I don't know what's on their tablet, but more than likely they're probably playing games
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
at a function with their family. So
Mm-hmm.
while the adults are talking and doing everything, they're playing with their game,
Mm-hmm.
disconnected from the world around them, disconnected to what's actually going on.
I'm
And
not
so,
surprised.
say what?
I said I'm not at all surprised.
Yeah. And so when it comes to horses, you have to be connected. You
Mm-hmm.
have to pay attention. You have to raise your awareness level in order to make sure that number one, you stay safe, but not only that you stay safe, you stay in an environment of where you are present. And so
Mm-hmm.
people in our world today don't know how to be present. They don't know how to be in that moment, at that moment. But whether what they'll do is they'll be here thinking about what's going on or what's for dinner or all these other different avenues. And
Mm-hmm.
so with the three C's, connection, communication, and character, it really gives us the triangle that we try to do as an approach to help people understand how they show up in the world and how these horses can help them be more productive individuals.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, in closing, what would you say would be your advice to parents who are just looking for ways to help their children build resilience and just to help them grow and encourage?
Well, if you can't get to SOFA Ranch in the Metro Atlanta area, there are different organizations across the country that would do a simple Google search of equine-assisted therapy services or
Mm-hmm.
equine-assisted exposure experiences, where they can learn more about horses. There's a show on it's on Prime Video, uh,
Mm-hmm.
well, Amazon Prime. It's
Mm-hmm.
called Beyond Black Beauty.
Okay.
It tells a story about this young lady that used to do dressage lessons over in Europe, and then she has to transfer her life over into Baltimore. And you're not too far from Baltimore,
Mm-hmm.
and so she start understanding the nuances of how she's working with horses and how this breaks down into her everyday life. And I bring that story up because this particular barn is set in an urban area. It's set in an environment where they don't necessarily have all the advantages of other people have. But, when it comes to your listeners, that represents many and possibly some of your listeners that, well, I don't know where to go. I don't know who has horses and all these different things. There is an organization called PATH, who I got my certification through. PATH
Mm-hmm.
stands for Professional Association of Therapeutic Horsemanship. They have a database of different ranches that may be in the area that you can take advantage of
Mm-hmm.
equine assisted therapy services. And so that, like I said, there's a directory to probably find the closest one near you.
Yes, that's good. I'm glad you mentioned that. And I would also wonder, I'm in the Washington, D.C. area, and the National Park Service,
Hmm.
Rock Creek Park has horses.
Hmm.
And that was my first introduction in elementary school, probably about the same age as you were when you were exposed to horses. And that can be another way to experience horses, and who knows from there what you can do.
And I would say to our listeners, don't be afraid.
Hmm.
Don't transfer your anxiety to your children,
Yes.
because we just had an event here this past Sunday where we had 32 children between the ages of 3 and 17 uh,
Hmm.
getting exposed to horses and riding horses and equine assisted learning. And working with the parents that particular session, the parents were more afraid than the children were.
Mm.
And I say that because parents, we can sometimes transfer our anxiety to our children unknowingly and have them be afraid of something that they don't even know why they are afraid of.
Yes.
So give your children, that's one of the reasons why we do our Horses Healing the Hood program. Give your children the ability and the capacity to be exposed to as much as they can so that they can grow and start making their own decisions of you know what, I have no reason to be afraid. I have no, if I can, we tell people like this, if I can show you how to handle a 1,400-pound horse, there should be no reason that you are afraid of a bully. If I can show you how to handle a 1,400-pound horse, then there's no reason, there's nothing that you can't do when you go to school. So here it is. We want to make sure that we're building this pattern of success for our children when they're working with these horses. Because if I handle this horse, then guess what? I can handle calculus. I can handle algebra. I can handle geometry. Just simply giving them the exposure and the experience to these things or to these horses.
Right.
Reinforce that narrative that, you know what, my child can do anything. So don't allow your anxiety parents to be your children's hangups, because it's so important that we give them the ability to be exposed to as much as we can so that they can go on to be more productive adults in our world today.
Wonderful. Well, how can we follow you in your work?
Well, you can follow me on Instagram, on all social media platforms. Our website is www.sofaranch.org. SOFA is spelled with two O's, SOOF as in Frank, RANCH.org, or SOFA Ranch on all social media platforms, TikTok, Instagram. I do have a offer to our listeners that if you go over to horseshealingthehood.com, you can get a free ebook, 5 Ways Horses Empower Our Communities. And that way you'll have to learn a little bit more about the work we do and tells a little bit more stories that we have here or have experienced here at SOFA Ranch, and also has some statistical data and information to help us understand how horses can really impact and help our children grow to be productive individuals. And that's horseshealingthehood.com. It's a free resource. Download the book to learn more about the work that we do here, and also the work that horses can do for a particular person's child.
Well, I certainly hope that everyone takes advantage of that resource, whether they live in the metropolitan Atlanta area or elsewhere. Just being exposed to this idea that horses can really have a healing effect on our children and help them to grow and develop in some amazing ways. And so I, again, am just, my mind is blown by all of the wonderful things that you are doing at SOFA Ranch and the impact that you're having on children. And I hope that this was an eye-opening conversation for our audience, because equine-assisted therapy really makes a difference. And so to those of you out there who were listening or watching, if you're intrigued by the idea of horses and helping your children grow and thrive, I hope you will check out SOFA Ranch's social media and website for more information. And be sure to like and share this episode with your mom and dad friends and your community, and subscribe to the Parenting 411 podcast on your favorite podcast platform, as well as YouTube. And until next time, keep being the amazing parents that you are. And remember, it is never too late to be the parent you want to be. Thank you. And I can't wait to talk to you again next time.
We bring you this episode for the purpose of information and entertainment only. It is not the intent or purpose of the Parenting 411 podcast or Carol Maletta to provide an exhaustive reference or guide on all aspects of parenting, childcare, and family life. You are strongly encouraged to read all available information, consult medical or other appropriate professionals, and pursue all reasonable means to learn as much as possible about parenting to complement what you gain here, and then tailor the information to meet your individual needs. Yes, parenting is a serious matter, though it is not an exact science. The context and insights offered in this and every episode represent an account of knowledge and personal experiences of the host and any featured guests for the viewers' and listeners' information and consideration. The host and guests do not guarantee to our viewers or listeners any specific parenting outcomes from this episode or taking actions described here.